I really would love to kind of hear from you some of the themes and trends that you notice within those corporate environments that has really connected to the work that you're doing today as a coach.
Yeah, so one thing very early on, and I've talked about this multiple times, but it's the idea of the top-down approach, which at the time I didn't really understand what that meant, and I wasn't even thinking that way. But when I was in these positions, I realized that there was so much influence from the leaders, from the managers, from the owners in some of the companies that I worked with, and everybody played off of them. And so the interesting thing is when I get into the work that I do now is I'm realizing that if and when you can help a leader, you can help a whole team. And so I saw that there was leaders that did that very well, and I saw some leaders that didn't do that so well. And so that really just allowed for me to observe that, oh, this is a huge, huge thing that then leads to being able to run a better team, but also build a better business. And so that was one thing, this theme that I often saw. The other thing that I also often saw was, individuals who were in my role, but who had been more experienced. They had been with the company longer. They had lots more knowledge on the specific job that we were doing. And yet their ability to perform was drastically different than mine. And so, yes, I was a little bit younger. I may have had a little bit more energy. But at the end of the day, the things they were doing or not doing outside of work were impacting how they were able to truly show up. So if you think about, the guys that I used to work with, instead of that, when I would be on the road 150 nights a year in a hotel when I was at my last job, my end of my night was not to go out and get a couple of drinks with the guys and take the edge off. Like that I knew was going to then dictate how energized I woke up for the next day, how I was able to show up with my coworkers, with my potential clients and clients, with my team. And so to me, that was very interesting to see that the dynamic is that the individuals who are wanting to escape the things that they are potentially challenged with at work versus the individuals that take them head on, like myself, really gets to show up in how successful they are in their role.
Was that a lot of the driver to get into that coaching seat, was to go, how can we actually kind of pull these skills and make sure that we can give it to more people?
Yeah, it was a mix between my own personal experience and getting to see the profound impact that it had and the success, and like, wow, that's really cool. This is what can actually happen, and getting to see that as an example, but then also getting to see on the other side of things of how, if you swing to the other end of the pendulum, that how it can be and how individuals might not operate. So that was really exciting to me. And, I think back to one of my last jobs, and it was so funny to me that the guys who weren't doing this would joke around, oh, Pat's going to get up early and go do his little workout thing, or Pat's going to go eat these healthy foods while we do this. But really, all they were really saying is that they were too scared and were avoiding that because they knew that that was too uncomfortable for them to get into, even though they know it would help them.
What type of work did you do before working full-time as a coach?
So I had a few different jobs. I actually had 4 full-time jobs before working as full-time as a coach. First one was in leadership development at the first job that I had coming right out of college. And then the last 3 jobs after that were all in outside sales. And then at one point I was working 2 jobs, and that was my full-time job plus part-time at a local GNC.
So talking about these high-performing men, and again, just talking about all the things that they're dealing with, the highs, the lows, the successes, the things that they're struggling with, what are some of the hidden costs of ignoring some of this internal work for them, even if they waited just another 6 months?
Oh yeah, so if individuals are waiting another 6 months, maybe even 12 months, or maybe just a few months, some of the hidden costs that they most likely aren't going to see right away is how it impacts their business, because that typically shows up 30, 60, 90 days later. So it's going to show up in, potentially quiet quitting of their team, individuals who aren't as engaged, things that they aren't going to see right away. They'll also see that in the communication, in their being able to be present at home with their wife or with their kids or with their family. So those are definitely hidden costs that are there. The other thing that we don't also think about is, how is you continuing to live in a stressed out state or an incoherent state impacting your physical body? Because we can't see what's going on. We don't know if things are shifting for the worse within us. And so what's very interesting is our mind and our emotions are things that we can become aware of, and they're easy to notice. But when it comes to the physical body, a lot of those physical ailments don't show up until later on. And so until it's too late, right? You hear about individuals having a heart attack very early on. And if you were to actually bring that back, it's like, how much time are they actually living in stress? And so there's lots of hidden costs associated when you are prolonging some of this for anything, prolonging it longer than it needs to be. The other thing that comes to mind is, at the end of the day, if we are wanting to prolong this type of work, all we're really doing is we are making it harder for us to get into it. And so that's one hidden cost, is not only are you not being able to experience what this could be like, but you're also putting yourself at a disadvantage to get started, because the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be.
If you were to kind of narrow it down to one thing that you were like, if men or people do blank, this is that piece that really is going to propel you into that and that, what would you say?
Well, I think the biggest thing is being present. And being present is essentially correlated or directly correlated with being in coherence in your heart and brain, because that is ultimately the flow that allows for you to be fully present, not worried about all the stuff that's going on tomorrow or dwelling about what happened yesterday, but being right here. And if you can be right here, how much more efficient are you with communicating with your kids, with your family, with potential clients, versus the same guy that's right here physically, but mentally out there? And so to me, that's just the secret sauce of it all. It's like learning how to continually be in the present moment and labor for the present moment. That's when you're going to be the most efficient. And you no longer have to sit there at work worrying about all the things I need to get done, because when you're there, you're able to actually get them done in an efficient manner. So much so that when you go home, you're no longer thinking about them. Why? Because you got them done. But being distracted, living in an incoherent state, doesn't allow for you to operate at the same level. So now you're not able to do as much as you like to or you think you need to. And then now all of a sudden you're bringing that back home. And that, of course, is a revolving door.
Yeah, it sounds like the idea of presence just really allows intention and efficiency and effectiveness and all these little small pieces to exist in order to kind of get your most bang for your buck in terms of what you need to do, so that you can prioritize it. What I think is funny, and what I think often we think as humans, is we're really smarter than all that. We can actually be thinking about those things and live in that world, but I can convince Pat that I'm actually here with him right now.
Sure. Well, and that's the common myth of multitasking. Nobody's really that great at multitasking. They're really good at just switching back and forth, but they do it so fast that they think they're multitasking, when all they're really doing is they're switching their focus from one thing to the next and back and back and back, and that's where it can become very, very draining. And I think that's really interesting, because I thought that for myself all the time, of that, I can multitask and do a million things at once. And to some degree, you feel like you can, but then you take a step back and you actually do one thing fully focused, and you realize how much quicker and efficient you are.
What's the biggest myth elite men believe about performance that's actually keeping them stuck?
Yeah, I would say one of the biggest myths that high-performing men believe that's actually keeping them stuck is that, one, they can do it all alone. That's one for sure. It's definitely not the case. If they think that they can do it all alone, take a look at their entire life. Right? Who built their car? That wasn't alone. Who helps them, take care of their family? They don't do all of that alone. So to say, I'm just going to continue to do it all alone is a total myth, because they've been running their entire life by not doing things just alone. So that's one. They think that they can do it all alone, but just by realizing that and acknowledging it. Another myth that a lot of high-performing guys fall into is thinking that it's when they reach a certain level of success, could be professionally, could be the amount of money they make, certain car, whatever the case is, that all of a sudden, all of their stress will go away and they'll be eternally happy. And if you know anything about and read anything about billionaires, there are tons of miserable billionaires, and that's just a reminder that that's not how it works.
What will it take for men to actually stay mentally fit in today's fast-paced world?
Well, first and foremost, it's going to, for individuals, specifically men, to stay mentally and emotionally fit in today's world, they're going to need to prioritize it and know that it is an important piece to the greater puzzle. And if they were able to at least train it like they train at the gym, which a lot of guys go to the gym, work out, do those things, they are actually going to leverage themselves to be the best that they can be as we go through a lot of these transitions. So thinking about that when it comes to individuals staying mentally fit amongst all of the changes, one of the first things that they could do is just take a little bit of time to slow down. Right? I think about, one of the biggest things that I utilize is meditation. And the reason I utilize it is because it allows for me to get back to baseline. It allows for me to come back to center and then to be able to operate from there. And so if I'm scattered all of the time, if I'm mentally and emotionally drained, or if I'm constantly distracted because I have so many things going on in my life and I'm not doing any of that, I'm essentially burning the candle at both ends, and over time there's no candle left, and then now you're stuck. And so for me, I think that's super important. And one of the things I recommend to literally all of my clients, and again, it's not the only piece to the puzzle, but it is one piece, and I always recommend meditation. And many individuals, one of the most common misconceptions that they get is that when they are meditating or trying to meditate and they notice that their mind is racing, they think they're doing it wrong. But in reality, them becoming aware that their mind is racing is them doing it right. That's creating a level of awareness to notice that I'm no longer in that same pattern, because if I was in that pattern, I'd continue to go down the rabbit hole of it and not even realize that I was doing it. And so I think meditation is one of the easiest things for individuals to get into. It does take time. It takes practice. And I've been doing it for nearly a decade, and I still am not 100% at it. That's why it's called meditation practice, not meditation perfection. Sure. Right? No one perfects it. It's just a practice. It's constantly evolving. And so just like going to the gym, it takes time. You don't just get fit and stay fit. You have to keep doing it. And the same thing goes with meditation.
One of the things you just mentioned in your response was this idea of baseline. Mm-hmm. For someone who lives in that state of stress and anxiety, or just constantly going almost to where, again, right, we talked about personalities, that's almost just who they are, how they function, and how they live. I'm curious, how would you even help that person understand what baseline is for them, right? Is that a feeling that they experience? How would they even know if they're at baseline?
Well, first and foremost, I would say they'll know when they're getting back to baseline when they can slow down without feeling like they need to do something. The other thing that I would say is individuals will know when they're getting back to baseline, because when I'll get in a conversation with them, they finally say something and they go, that's them finally digressing down. So every time before that, that's them in that moment. The other thing that comes to mind for me is when it comes to getting back to baseline, specifically for men, is that in doing so, in being able to slow themselves down, they're training their mind and their body to know that this can be normal, this can be natural, this can be automatic. And the more that they do that, they're giving signals to the body and to the mind that, hey, this is how I want to operate. And over time, just like the conditioning that got them to be anxious all the time, they can condition themselves to come into a more coherent state to make it more baseline.